morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told that I had a voice for radio, so today I am going to be showing you another exciting new card from the upcoming Pokémon Sun and Moon expansion. It's Passimian. Now, this is a card that passed me by first time round. I looked at it and I went, meh. And I just looked at it again a couple of days ago and I'm like, this card rocks. Now, a little bit of background here. We've already looked at Oranguru, a very good card that I gave a large number of Wassies to. Link to that video is in the description. Now, these are basically counterpart Pokemon. In Pokemon Moon, you can have Oranguru, and in Pokemon Sun, you can have Passimian. So given that Oranguru's already been given a very good card, we need to look at whether Passimian can keep up. Now, starting off here, we have the fact that he is a fighting type. This is very, very good right now. Now, a lot of stuff does resist this. Think things like Yveltal's probably the most obvious one, but even things like Talonflame and Rayquaza, lots of stuff resist fighting. That's a pain. But I've done a whole bunch of videos about Pokemon that look like they're going to be good in the future. Links to all of these will, like I've said, be in the description. Things like Snorlax GX, Gumshoes GX, Tauros GX, Oranguru himself, all of which are weak to fighting. I think fighting could soon become a very, very good type to be indeed. It has other advantages like strong energy that we're going to talk about in a moment. 110 HP on a basic, you know what? That's pretty good. I can live with that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, retreat cost of 1, it could be worse. Could be better, could be free, but it could be worse. That's not a bad retreat cost. Weakness to Psychic is standard and expected for a fighting type, but you know what? It's really... Psychic's just not that great at the moment. Now remember, I keep saying every time I say this, both Mew and Mew EX can copy attacks, so you can easily tech against Psychic weak Pokemon using Mew and Mew EX. Now, let's get on to the attacks, because that's where I get very excited. First attack, 1 fighting energy, 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. That's alright. Now, there's a whole bunch of 30 HP Pokemon. Think Magikarp, think Joltik, think Wishiwashi, about whom I did a video fairly recently. But if you hit in the active, and let's say you pop a strong energy on Passimian, well, now you're doing 50 to the active for 1 energy. Let's say you pop a Fighting Fury Belt on him because he is a basic. Now you're doing 60 for 1 energy on turn 1. And that will KO a whole bunch of stuff. Think something like Oranguru, who's got 120 HP and a weakness to fighting. He gone. Think something like Litten, and I'm still a big fan of Incineroar GX. He gone. You could start taking KOs with this fairly quickly. So although it's only 30... you can hit quite nicely if you combine it with stuff like strong energy and a Fighting Fury bout. 60 for 1 energy, turn 1 on a basic. That's pretty good. And let's not forget that your opponent often will try and retreat a Pokemon back to the bench, forcing you to use a Lysander to do the last little bit of damage to get the KO. Having a little bit of bench sniping is pretty darn good. But that's not the attack I'm really interested in. It's cool, but it's not the attack I'm really interested in. The attack I'm really interested in is his second attack, Team Play. 2 colourless energy. Now there's 2 ways to go. Number 1, you just play a double colourless energy. Way 2, you go the fighting energy, and this opens up 2 routes. Either you use strong energy to do extra damage, or you use basic fighting, and that opens up Max Elixir. Max Elixir is an item card. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck, find a basic energy you find, and attach it to one of your benched basic Pokemon. Well, Passimian is in fact a basic Pokemon. So as long as he's on the bench, you can use this. So you can use double colourless, but you don't have to. Word of warning, if you're using Max Elixir, you probably have to choose between strong energy or double colourless. Because if you're using 4 strong and 4 double colourless, you're probably only playing 3 or 4 basic energy. Your chances of hitting one of them with a Max Elixir will be slim, ladies and gentlemen. So that's how you pay the attack cost. We should probably talk about what it actually does. 10 damage plus 30 times the number of Passimian on your bench. 3 Passimian on your bench, 100 damage for a double colourless on a basic Pokemon. That means if on turn 1 you can pop a double colourless on Passimian, you can then bench the other 3 Passimian in your deck and you're hitting for 100 damage on turn 1. Now I made a case that hitting for 60 on turn 1 was pretty sweet. How about hitting 100? Let's go back to those Fighting Week basic GXs like Snorlax and Tauros. You can get a turn 1 KO on a basic for a single energy attachment that gives up 2 prizes. Now, not all of your opponents are going to be playing Snorlax GX and Tauros GX, but I'm using these as examples of how good this could be. Now, obviously here you may have a Passimian prize, and that's going to suck, because if you've got 1 prize, now you're hitting for a maximum 70. But remember, he is a basic Pokemon, so Fighting Fury Belt comes out here. So you're actually hitting 110 with 3 on the bench, or you're hitting 80 with 2 on the bench. Heck, with 1 on the bench, you're still hitting for 50, although at that stage, to be honest, I'd rather be using Fling, the first attack, with a strong energy. So, there's a lot of good things to do here. Now, there are other ways to increase damage. We've already talked about Fighting Fury Belt. I should add that actually puts them up to 150 HP as well as doing extra damage. We've talked about Strong Energy, but don't forget there are more. Professor Kukui allows you to do 20 extra damage if you use it as your supporter for the turn. Now, the chances of getting all 3 Passimian on the bench using a supporter that only draws 2 cards, link to my video about Kukui in the description, it does 20 damage extra for all your attacks to the active, and it lets you draw 2 cards. You know, you're not going to be able to draw all 3 Passimian using that as your supporter for the turn, but still, it is an option at least as the game goes on. And because Passimian is a fighting type, we've got Regirock here. So, now this is the absolute best case scenario, but let's do the maths with me, ladies and gentlemen. Passimian in the active, 3 on the bench, 100 damage. Now, you are popping a Fighting Fury Belt on him, 110 damage. Professor Kukui puts him up to 130 damage. 4 Regirock on the bench put him up to 170 damage. With a double colourless on the very first turn of the game. Now, you are going to have to play a Skyfield here to allow yourself, because you will need 7 bench Pokemon to pull this off. And let's be perfectly frank, you're not getting all of that playing Kukui as your supporter for the turn. But maybe in the mid to late game. Now, it's a lot to ask for. It's a heck of a combo. But double colourless energy, Fighting Fury Bout, 3 Passimian on the bench, 4 Regirock EX on the bench, and a Professor Kukui here, and you're hitting 170 HP for a single energy attachment on 150 HP basic. And that's without bringing in strong energy. If you start bringing in strong energy on him, it goes even higher. 1 strong energy, 190. 2 strong energy, 210. I could keep going, you get the point. Now, this obviously opens up a huge amount of options. I have told you the ideal scenario, ladies and gentlemen, and there will be games you can pull this off. But you are not going to be doing this every single game. But you don't have to be doing it every single game. He is a non-EX Pokemon who gives up 1 prize when KO'd. So if you get, let's say, I don't know, 2 Passimian on the bench Fighting Fury Belt and 2 Regirock, now you're hitting for 100 damage. And you can keep doing permutations. I'm not going to go through every single permutation. That would make this video long. And I suggest maybe a little less interesting. But I'm hoping you're getting the idea now. So the only thing we need to really talk about before we leave is how to play this. Because there are options. Now, although I've mentioned Regirock EX as a viable partner, it is not the way I personally would probably run it. Now, I'd have to do a lot more testing here. But he's got a big retreat cost, he takes up bench space, he's an EX that your opponent can Lysander and KO, etc. He's a bit awkward. What I would really want to do with Passimian is just double colourless energy, try and be hitting for 110 with all 4 Passimian out, and Fighting Fury Belt on my active. Don't forget, if you've got any Passimian prize, you really want to play Town Map here to make sure that you know which prizes you're taking, so that the first prize you take will be any of your bench Passimians here. and that would be pretty good. But I also quite like the Strong Energy Max Elixir route, because let's not sleep on the fact that his first attack, especially when you start building in Strong Energy and Fighting Fury Belt, is still very, very viable. So playing 7 or 8 basic fighting with 4 Strong Energy, using Fling early on, building up to your team play big attack later in the game, I think could be a lot of fun indeed. And let's not forget, you can play this with Oranguru as well. Just get some of them on your bench as well, use the attack and the ability. He's attacking for double colourless energy. Now he's not fighting, so you can't pop a Strong Energy on him, but even so, you know, these guys don't make terrible partners. And as a side note here, when we're talking about his first attack, don't forget about the attack Wide Lens. Wide Lens allows you to hit for weakness when you're hitting people on the bench, so actually here you can be hitting 60 on the bench, which will be enough to KO things like Rattata, which I still contend should be seeing a fair bit of play. Now in Expanded we have a couple of other tricks. I'm not going to spend very long on this, but if you're playing in the Expanded format, you also have Hypnotoxic Laser, which poisons your opponent, meaning that you can do an extra 10 damage between turns, and you have Fighting Stadium here, which means you do an extra 20 damage to EX Pokemon. Though, of course, this will be less and less relevant as we move from the EX era to the GX era. Or you can just play Burbank City Gym, so you don't do 10 extra damage with poison between turns. You do 30. Although remember that if you want to get all your Passimians, etc. out, Skyfield, especially if you're playing things like Oranguru or Regirock, could be very, very useful here. Now, one extra little trick, of course, is if you use Skyfield to get all your Regirock on the bench, if your opponent replaces your Skyfield, then you can discard the Regirock when you have to put your bench down to 5, making them less good Lysander targets. But there are huge downsides to playing Regirock here, so please be very, very careful. And the last trick we've got in Expanded, which really should not be overlooked, ladies and gentlemen, is Focus Sash. Focus Sash means that you cannot be one-hit KO as long as it's attached to a fighting Pokemon, which is absolutely huge. It means that not only do you have a 110 HP basic, but you can't be one-hit KO'd unless, of course, your opponent goes and plays something like a Hypnotoxic Laser, so you get KO'd by poison between turns. It is absurd. So, let's sum this bad boy up, focusing on Stand, although I've told you about my thoughts in Expanded. 110 HP basic Pokemon, which means you can use Max Elixir and Fighting Fury Belt. Fighting Pokemon hits for good weakness as long as allowing you access to things like Strong Energy. He's got a good first attack, an insane second attack that hits for 100 damage if you can just get 3 other Pokemon on your bench. And this is just efficient. Now, if you're not hitting for weakness, you're not getting big KOs here. Fine, I get it. But hitting for 100 a turn on a non-EX with 150 HP that just gives up a single prize? I could get excited about this, ladies and gentlemen. I really, really could. And for that reason, I'm giving Passimian 4 Wassies. There are some decks from Sun and Moon that I absolutely have to test. One of them is Oranguru, one of them is Incineroar GX, and one of them is Passimian. Now, this is YouTube, so you know how it works. Comment, like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter @TheWassie, and the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.